You used to know how your body felt. You used to know what a normal heartbeat felt like, what a normal night of sleep felt like, what it felt like to walk into a room without checking the exits first. And somewhere in the last few years, without any single dramatic event you could point to, that changed. Now your chest tightens over things that never used to matter. Now you lie awake replaying a conversation from Tuesday. Now you tell yourself it is just stress, just age, just too much coffee. But some part of you already suspects that is not the whole story. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone in it. A lot of what gets said about anxiety after 35 is not actually true. Some of it comes from good intentions. Some of it comes from people who have never lived inside a body that reacts this way. Either way, believing the wrong things about what is happening to you can keep you stuck in it far longer than necessary. Before we go further, if you have found your way here because something in your own life feels a little harder to carry than it used to, consider subscribing to A Friend to Heal With. This is a place for people figuring out midlife as it actually is, not as it is supposed to be. And if you would like, tell us in the comments what city, state, or country you are watching from tonight. It tends to be a longer list of places than people expect, and there is something quietly comforting in that. There is a particular kind of person who ends up here. Maybe you are someone who has always been the reliable one, the one who holds things together for a spouse, for kids, for aging parents, for a job that expects more of you every year than it did the year before. You have never had the luxury of falling apart, so you did not. Instead, the tightness in your chest got a different name. You called it stress. You called it being tired. You called it just how things are now that I am older. A lot of people do this, quietly, for years, because admitting the word anxiety feels like admitting something is wrong with you, and you have spent your whole adult life being the person nothing is wrong with. But anxiety after 35 rarely arrives the way it is shown in movies, with a single dramatic panic attack in a parking lot. More often, it shows up as a low hum underneath an ordinary Tuesday, a racing mind at 2 in the morning, a stomach that will not settle before a routine meeting, an irritability with your own children that surprises you and then shames you. None of that means you are broken. It means your nervous system has been trying to get your attention for a long time, and you have been very good at ignoring it. The truth is, by the time most adults in midlife recognize what they are actually feeling, they have already been carrying it silently for months, sometimes years, mistaking a persistent alarm for a personality trait. But if it is not simply stress, and it is not simply age, then what is actually happening underneath it? And why now, of all times in your life? One of the most common things people believe is that if you did not struggle with anxiety in your 20s, you cannot develop it now. It feels logical. Anxiety seems like something you either have or you do not, something baked in early. But that is not how the nervous system actually works. Midlife brings a specific kind of cumulative pressure that earlier decades usually do not. You're frequently managing more responsibility with less recovery time than you had before. You may be caring for children and aging parents in the same season of life. You are old enough to have accumulated real losses, real disappointments, real evidence that things do not always work out the way you planned, and young enough to still feel the pressure of time running out on the plans that have not happened yet. This is often called the sandwich generation experience, and it is not just a scheduling problem, it is an emotional one. Your body does not distinguish between a threat from a predator and a threat from an overflowing inbox, a strained marriage, or a parent's declining health. It simply registers sustained pressure and responds the way it is built to respond, with vigilance, with a racing heart, with a mind that will not stop scanning for the next problem. For some adults, this can also be connected to identity changes that are unique to this decade of life. Watching a career plateau. Watching your body change in ways you cannot control. Watching your children need you less at exactly the moment you expected life to feel settled. None of this means something is fundamentally wrong with you. It means your system has been asked to hold more than it was given room to process. But understanding why it started is only half the picture. The harder question is why it does not go away on its own, even during the calmer weeks. Here is where a second myth quietly does damage. Many people believe that if the anxious feeling is not about anything specific right now, it must not be real, or it must simply pass on its own if they wait long enough. So they wait. They push through the discomfort, tell themselves they will deal with it once things calm down at work, once the kids are older, once this particular season ends. But anxiety that has been ignored for a long time does not usually fade quietly in the background. It tends to reinforce itself through avoidance. You start declining invitations that once felt easy. You stop bringing up certain worries with your partner because you do not want to seem dramatic. You keep your body in a low-level state of bracing, and bracing, over months and years, becomes exhausting in a way that mimics depression, which is part of why so many people in this age group describe feeling both anxious and completely worn out at the same time. There is also a quieter belief that keeps this pattern going. The idea that noticing your own anxiety is somehow indulgent when there are people depending on you. So you manage everyone else's stress while treating your own as something to handle later. Alone, at midnight, when no one needs anything from you. If any of this is landing a little too close to your own week, that is worth pausing on for a second. If this part of the video is putting language to something you have carried quietly for a long time, consider subscribing, because this channel exists for exactly these conversations, the ones most adults have never said out loud to anyone. But recognizing the pattern is not the same as knowing how to interrupt it. The good news is that interrupting it does not require overhauling your entire life. A third common myth is that anxiety at this stage of life can only really be managed through willpower, through simply trying harder to relax, or through quick techniques like a few deep breaths before a meeting. Those tools are not useless, but treating them as a complete solution is a bit like putting a bandage on a sprained ankle and expecting to run a marathon on it. Breathing exercises can calm your body in a moment, but they do not address why your body keeps returning to that state in the first place. One meaningful shift is learning to name what you're feeling with more precision than just stressed or fine. Naming a feeling as specifically as unsettled, or overwhelmed, or quietly resentful gives your mind something concrete to work with instead of a vague cloud of discomfort, and this small act of precision has been shown to reduce the intensity of the emotional response itself. Another shift involves noticing the automatic thoughts that show up during anxious moments, the ones that sound like certainties, such as "I am failing everyone," or "this will never get easier," and gently asking whether they are entirely true or whether they are simply familiar. Familiar is not the same as accurate. A further step involves setting small, realistic boundaries, not enormous life changes, but specific ones, such as protecting 1 hour in the evening that is not available to anyone else's requests. And for many adults, especially those who have quietly carried this for years, speaking with a licensed mental health professional is not a sign that something has gone wrong with you. It is simply the most direct way to get individualized support for a pattern that has had a long time to take root. None of these steps erase what you're feeling overnight, and that is worth saying plainly, because anyone promising an instant fix is not being honest with you. What they do is begin to loosen a pattern that has had years to settle in, which is a very different thing from failing to fix yourself quickly enough. If you take nothing else from this, take this. The anxiety you have been feeling since your mid-30s or later is not evidence that you are fragile, and it is not evidence that you have somehow failed to handle adulthood as well as everyone else appears to. It is evidence that you have been carrying real weight, often invisibly, for a long time, and that your body has been doing exactly what bodies are built to do under sustained pressure. You do not need to have a crisis to justify taking this seriously. You do not need to wait until it gets unbearable before it deserves attention, and you do not need to solve it entirely alone at midnight while everyone around you sleeps peacefully, unaware of what you are carrying. Before we close, tell us in the comments one thing you're ready to stop calling just stress. You do not need to explain the whole story. Sometimes naming it honestly, even in a single sentence, is the first small act of taking yourself seriously. If part of what you heard tonight felt uncomfortably accurate, that discomfort is not a warning sign about you. It is simply a sign that you have spent a long time managing this quietly and well. Perhaps the goal was never to go back to feeling the way you did at 25. Perhaps it is to finally build a relationship with yourself honest enough to notice when something is wrong before it has to shout to be heard. Take care of yourself this week. And remember, you do not have to carry this alone.